Hello and welcome to A Bold and Distant Future. This is a special episode of the continuing series that we're doing surrounding an investigation that we're making into the Dark Enlightenment, and it's a series that we're calling The Bright Endarkenment. Now, I'm not sure if this is are we on to part 4? Are we still part 2, phase 3? Where are we now, Scooter?
Okay, so this is stream number 2, anarcho-capitalism, objectivism, and I guess the new right. This is part 2 of the second part of that discussion.
That's great. Part 2 of the second part.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So this is, 2.5, I don't know.
Makes sense.
But hopefully we can wrap it up with this. Let's see, how can I best start this? We ended here in our last discussion regarding how Murray Rothbard and what was kind of the fledgling group that ultimately became the Libertarian Party had been involved in the New Left, specifically SDS and Peace and Freedom Party. So a lot of this stuff I got out of something called Left and Right, a journal of libertarian thought that was actually edited by Rothbard. Ran for about 3 years. It has some really interesting content. It's online. You can find it. It's via the Mises Institute. By the way, if you have interest in libertarianism, probably the Mises Institute is your first go-to place, because they have a huge archive of everything, not just anarcho-capitalist work, but everything having to do with the libertarian movement up until about this point. Then they kind of veer off into their own ideology. And I want to emphasize again that anarcho-capitalists are a subset of a larger movement. Not all libertarians are anarcho-capitalists. Not anarcho-capitalists really sign on to the whole libertarian program. In fact, they have a derogatory name for other libertarians, which is modal libertarian. Modal libertarian is somebody who takes libertarianism as they would see it as a license to, do drugs, have strange sex, and get filthy rich.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean the Trump Epstein class?
Yes. Kind of like the Trump Epstein class. Yeah. Eyes Wide Shut was a documentary. So bear that in mind, that there are fractures. Mm-hmm. And there are subsets. And there is such a thing as left libertarian. And it is distinguished from anarchism insofar as they're not collectivist, or at least not primarily collectivist. We talked about one of those guys, Carl Hess, last week.
Right.
So, all right. So, point being is at this particular junction, the libertarians consciously identified themselves with the left, or at least the Rothbard group consciously identified itself with the left. That changed. And we're going to get into that right now. But before we do, just quickly, here's 3 articles that appeared in Left and Right, and they're surprising given the trajectory that movement took later. You would not expect a libertarian to offer a eulogy to Che Guevara, nor would you expect, a libertarian of 2026 to come out in support of the Black Revolution, and you definitely would not expect them to support the desecration of the flag, or allow for it, I should say. So there are these areas where, if you drew a Venn diagram, the Venn diagram would probably encompass about half of what the New Left was about at that time, and how that bled into what is essentially the right. People were against the Vietnam War across the board. It's not really appreciated now. Everybody sees it in retrospect as the opposition being essentially the student movement, when in fact there was all sorts of consternation about the war along the intellectual class across the spectrum. So that's interesting. At least I think it's interesting.
Yeah, very.
Sounds familiar.
So this is Lou Rockwell talking about Murray Rothbard. Lou Rockwell is kind of the current leader, if they have such a thing, the anarcho-capitalist. I think, in fact, anarcho-capitalist, the term was created by Lou Rockwell, rather. He says, if you want to understand Murray Rothbard, you need to keep one principle in mind. Murray believed in complete free market, the state, which Nietzsche called that coldest of all cold monsters, was the enemy. To maintain a free society, people needed to hold certain values. Murray was a traditionalist who believed in natural law and the family. He deplored assaults on tradition, such as the modern feminist movement, to your earlier point about patriarchy. Mm-hmm. In cultural matters, Murray started out on the right and has always remained there. I don't think that's quite true. I think Murray Rothbard was, in his heart, a libertarian than he was a conservative, based on what I've read about him. It's just that he was trying to be as pragmatic as possible and looking for allies. During the late 60s, he found them on the left. A little bit later on, not so much. So, one of the things mentioned was natural law. Now, I didn't know what this was. You guys may have a better idea. But I honestly, I've heard the term natural law. I have no idea where it came from. But it was used by Ayn Rand. I don't think she was particularly impressed with it. And it's been used by conservatives, well, since the beginning, if the beginning is Aristotle, who's that guy on the left. You could spend a lifetime going through this work, because that's Aristotle, that's Aquinas, that's John Locke. And right there, you've got enough material to just take you down all sorts of different paths, and you can spend a lovely adulthood just diving deep into all of this stuff. I'm going to try to do it in about 2 minutes.
So you're saying the foundation of libertarianism is based in natural law, this idea of natural law, huh?
Not just libertarianism. The conservative perspective is very much based on the idea of natural law. Now, as I understand it, and this is my limited understanding, natural law is the law that is inherent in human behavior. It is, Aristotle and Aquinas would say there's a divine origin for natural law.
Jeez.
So what does natural law cover? I'm going to come back to the slide in a second. Well, here's John Locke. He's talking about property. And he's saying, he that is nourished by acorns he picked up under the oak, or apples he gathered from the trees in the wood, has certainly appropriated them to himself. Nobody could deny that the nourishment is his. I asked them, when did they begin to be his? If 'tis plain, if the first gathering made them not his, nothing else could. The labor put a distinction between them and the common. That added something to them more than nature, the common mother of all, had done, so they became his private right. And will anyone say he has no right to those acorns or apples he thus appropriated, because he had not the consent of all mankind to make them his? If such a consent as that was necessary, man had starved, notwithstanding the plenty that God had given him. We see in the Commons, which remains so by compact, that is the taking part of what is common, and removing it out of the state of nature, that nature leaves it in, which begins the property, without which the common is of no use. So, fundamental to this idea of natural law is property.
Right.
And property is inherent in human behavior. If I take an apple off the tree, that apple is mine, and I can use it as I please. I can, eat it, or I could throw it at somebody. Although that would, the non-aggression principle probably kick in at that point. Has its own sort of existence in a way as an objective truth. So underlying natural laws is the idea of reason, which Aquinas gives us. And it suggests, therefore, that reason itself is something of an objective reality, that it is a way by which we determine how natural law works and in what capacity can we make use of it. And that reason alone is fundamental to, understanding life, understanding theology, understanding science, understanding everything, but in this context, understanding property rights. So you think something like the divine right of kings, there is a natural kind of that is the extension of natural law into hierarchy.
My first question about that is, when kings began to tax everyone else and take what was rightfully theirs, that violates that whole thing, right?
No, because it's rightfully theirs.
How so?
The king is the king.
Nah.
I'm telling you, this is kind of how it works, man. We're talking pure Westeros.
Yeah, and the absence of reason inherent in that thinking.
Well, reason
as they're defined. Yeah.
I'm going back to the acorns. You're wandering under the oak tree, picking up the acorns. Someone else is next to you picking up acorns. You can't take his acorns; they're his.
Yep.
So,
but extend that a bit. Let's not talk about the apples and the acorns. Let's talk about the trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
who owns the trees?
Yeah, and who also was benefiting from the produce of the tree? Everything, every being, every creature involved in that food web in and around the tree matters, and that thinking is entirely devoid of anything except the human experience interacting with his or her own need.
Well, ultimately, it's unnatural. Natural law is essentially unnatural, inherently.
Mm-hmm.
If you take an acorn off the tree, it is not being used for what it was intended to be used for, which is to plant an acorn.
Yeah.
So right there's this interesting kind of juxtaposition of natural law and natural reality.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that? But that's not the premise they're working off of. We are dealing with, in Aristotle's case, a society which is heavily regimented and extremely hierarchical.
Mm-hmm.
And defends its existence by insisting that this is natural.
Right.
This is the way that things should be. Aquinas applies that to church teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Locke applies that to property rights.
Interesting.
The big guy on the right, is somebody I was prepared to hate. I went into this. Literally, I spent an afternoon just kind of walking through this. That is my contribution to the philosophical legacy of mankind. I spent an afternoon on this. But that's David Hume.
Yeah.
And David Hume is often seen as dystopian. He's a guy with a really bad attitude. But he posits something that I think is a very reasonable response to the aforementioned natural law advocates, insofar as he says, and I don't have the quote, that reason can never operate alone. Reason always functions under passions. That at the end of the day, the human being is not itself a reasonable thing. It has the capacity for reason, but it is governed mostly by passion.
Exactly.
And that's kind of, I think, to some degree where you were going.
Mm-hmm.
So he's sometimes placed in the same group as advocates of natural law, but he doesn't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
Nor does he belong in those clothes. My God.
I was just thinking the same thing. That doesn't look at all dystopian to me. That looks like I got mine. What are you going to do about yours?
Yeah, kind of.
I want to go back to the acorns for a minute.
Okay, let's go back
Because
to the acorn.
we think about this thing of reason and passion. Okay, passion dictates you're going to go grab an acorn, stuff it in your mouth. You're going to get sick because of the toxins that are present in the acorn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So reason would dictate that you have to go through the process of leaching out the toxins that are in there before you can make it into a usable mash or flour, as the Native Americans did, for instance.
Yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with passion. That has to do with reason and connection to the natural world.
Yes.
True.
Which is one of the things. It's one of the things we've, as a society, many have lost.
Right.
And those in power have not at all got it. I mean, it's gone.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway, I wanted
know
to
if
toss
this-
that in
oh,
because
I'm
those
sorry, go ahead.
acorns are bugging me, man.
Mm-hmm.
so you want to spend a minute on this? What is it
Go
about
for
the
it.
acorns that truly bugs you?
I watch what happens to the acorns in the natural world. The squirrels bury them all over my frickin' yard. Oak trees are popping up everywhere in my beds, in the walkways. It's just like, yeah. And I know they are the ones that are truly involved in the natural world. But the gathering, like looking at Hume, the gathering of gold so that your shirt is embroidered with probably real gold thread and that kind of, and then saying, this is how it is for me, but this is not how it is for you. It just like, that doesn't strike me as connected to natural law or reason at all. And yet everybody goes along with it, right? Saying, oh yeah, well, you're the king, you deserve all that. And we really should be giving you all of our cash, but that's only what makes the machine tick.
Yeah, it definitely ticks for the right people. I think the confusion is the term natural law and the word natural in that context. There is no natural law. Of course, there's no natural law.
Right. And that's what, if I may add to that as well, it's just this narrow human linear thinking that we think is the nature of life in the universe, whether it's ordained by a divine entity or not. But we're so limited by this linear thinking that doesn't describe but a portion of our experience as humans, thinking people, or the rest of the universe in which we're living in. We know now that the nature of every species is to continue to be part of an experience, to reproduce and to continue to flourish. That's not at all mentioned in this linear thinking. Somehow man can't, it's viewed that man somehow is so intelligent it can separate itself from amongst all other sentient beings. And we now know that's false. That's true. We can conjure all of those imagined worlds and that divinity that guides all of this, but it's just a product of this very narrow, non-holistic, non-understanding web in which we live. So maybe we should go back to the beginning of that linearity and say, wait a minute, we were misdirected there, instead of, just continuing to promulgate it and say, this is what life is, and this is what we know, and this is what we sense about it. As Eddie just said, that, we collect the gold to justify and rationalize this limited thinking that we have.
I agree with you.
One of the things that you just said is spot on, and that is, we understand that we are connected as sentient beings to all the other components of this world. That doesn't really connect completely for the top of the food chain right now. They're not in that mindset. Yeah. They don't see that creating, extracting copper from a village in the mountains of South America that hopelessly pollutes the entire area has anything to do with them, except for the fact that they need to get that copper.
Exactly. Yep.
It doesn't compute for them. What computes is how much money is it worth. They look at a redwood forest, all they see is how many board feet they're looking at.
Yep, that's linearity. That's exactly. They're not seeing the web. And if we could redefine our purpose in life by saying we're all part of a web, a food web, if you wish to boil it down or distill it to that. And our role in life is to sustain and to grow that web, not at the expense of the web itself, to grow our own well-being.
And so it poses the question, how much collapse do we have to see before we actually all finally take action and say, no, this can't be?
Exactly. Yeah.
what I'm curious about is what's the opposite of natural law? Is it man's law or something like?
Yeah, right.
Scientific inquiry. It's sort of like
don't forget about how they've used divine law to
divine
rule in the
law.
masses.
I kind of see natural law as being like this divine right of kings kind of a philosophy, you know.
Well, bear in mind, before we go too far down that path, that modern libertarianism, at least until fairly recently, was profoundly atheistic, as was objectivism. Yet both make appeals. So the idea of natural law in this case is that it really is something that exists in this sort of quasi-metaphysical way, yet not divinely appointed.
Right.
It just is, the same way gravity is.
But still to benefit the human above all else.
Right.
And specific human, yeah.
Because it thinks again with that linear, reason-based justification for behavior.
Well, I think part of this is that it becomes an apologetic for the system as it exists, for the status quo.
Exactly. Yep.
This is how it is defended.
Right. Weak to the status quo for one's own advantage.
Right. My point being the status quo pre-exists natural law as a concept. Natural law is an add-on.
Yeah, agreed. A fanciful one, that is easily picked apart if you wish to do so and believe that there could be something larger than how we as humans think.
That's true, but then natural law allows for the police, and if you think that, you might get a visit.
Yeah. It's really interesting, if I may. I couldn't help but think, as soon as we began talking about in trying to unravel natural law, it made me think, my God, our history is nothing but a form of extractive capitalism from the very beginning.
Of a sort, yeah.
It's just
it is definitely, there to enrich.
Yeah. To extract and enrich at the expense of, without considering that there is an expense.
Or the fact that the expense is borne by somebody other than yourself.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Makes me just think how deeply Freudian our history is.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that.
Well, because Hume said, it's about passions. That the ego is so dominant in our experience, and that the questing and thirsting and hunger to satisfy that enormous need, we create and conjure all of these structures, all of these societal hierarchies to deliver upon that which we think that we must somehow need or have, and to do with less than that, to be thinking actually of a web or others or a greater purpose than ourselves is damn hard for us.
I think it's fair to say that the thing about natural law is that it's natural for the elite to create natural law.
And to become well-educated and dedicate all of your educational systems, your belief systems, to proving that point. Again, justifying that which you establish as an order in the world.
It allows you to maintain the sense of property rights that a 3-year-old has.
Exactly. Oh.
The interesting thing to consider is that as natural systems collapse, which we all know they are, and people want to look to the rich and powerful to solve the problem, and of course, once it gets to a certain point, it's not solvable anymore. Does that open their eyes to the fact that it's all been a farce all along, and that they should have been growing gardens and taking care of the woods around them to make sure that everything is copacetic for them?
Right. Taking care of the web, yeah.
You guys that live around forests, make sure you have a rake.
Right, there you go.
It's interesting that you say that, because I did a heck of a lot of forest raking. But I did it with a tractor.
Okay. All right. So, interesting discussion. We could keep this going for the rest of this podcast.
We probably should, though.
These are valuable dialogues, I think.
Baby chickens. Maybe you want to get us back in the flock.
You are a herder of cats now and chickens.
Yeah.
But thanks for the opportunity to bring this up, because it, that's what we must do is to try to position this linearity in male thinking and patriarchy against something that can balance it, and not just assuming that that's the only way that we can and should think about our history and our future.
Yeah, going off track a little bit, I hate to kind of further dive into the rabbit hole, but one of you guys mentioned perhaps doing a section on the patriarchy, and I responded, I believe, suggested that we get somebody who's not a man to do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I
agree.
got
So-
Valentine, but she's so damn busy. I don't know if she could take on another thing right now.
Well, there are other women.
That's true. We
Right.
all know some.
I agree. Let's get some other voices here for sure. Definitely.
Well, I mentioned you in particular, Roy, because I know you know.
I do. And I'm
Yeah.
curious who would be interested in being on the podcast. Some of the ladies I know don't even want to listen to this podcast. So, hey, there's a problem there. If we find a few women who want to speak, I'll produce the show and let them talk.
Yeah, I actually did ask one of the 3 women I actually know if she'd be interested, and she was not interested.
Mm-hmm.
I think the podcast itself is just seen as this male territory in a lot of ways.
Well, it would be less off-putting if we actually had some participation.
I
Yeah,
agree.
that's natural law.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you said that, because I was just thinking, does this go back to the natural law? Oh my God. Along with everything else we don't recognize we're connected to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to disparage it altogether. Again,
Agreed.
I spent an afternoon looking at this. People spend their lives
Yeah.
looking at this.
Yeah.
I don't know if,
dismiss.
critique of pure reason. What
Yeah.
is that?
Mm-hmm.
What is pure reason to begin with?
Well, I think we just talked about it. There's a lot to critique.
Isn't there?
Apparently somebody did. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but if you're around an objectivist and you mention Immanuel Kant, you'll probably get slugged
Mm-hmm.
in violation of the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
They don't like Kant.
Mm-hmm.
Hate him. So, the old right. This is going to be a bit of a jump from what we were talking about. So, if we go back here, bear with me for a moment, to this whole thing, where the left and the right kind of converge into this libertarian soup. What they were doing, in addition to kind of aligning themselves with the new left, is they were challenging the right by saying, listen, right-winger, reactionary, conservative assholes, you're missing like half your program. And the people who are pushing the half that you're missing are now all on the left. So these 3 books are really interesting. Reclaiming the American Right was written by Justin Raimundo. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. It's the way I pronounce it. Which focused on a series of writers, essayists, and so on, that were very much part of the very reactionary right. And we talked briefly about who those guys were. These are the guys that would have supported the coup against FDR. Do you know about that?
No, I'd never heard about that.
Okay, I don't. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I keep saying that. During FDR's first term, I believe, a group of businessmen got together with Smedley Butler, if you know who he is. Smedley Butler, Colonel Smedley Butler.
Good God.
Trying to overthrow FDR, huh?
And they had a plan to overthrow FDR, and Smedley Butler, if I've got the story correct, busted them.
Wasn't Smedley Butler part of the game Clue?
So,
Yeah, he had the knife in the kitchen.
Oh my God.
I'd never heard that
Yeah, I got the
story.
name
Interesting.
wrong. But Smedley Butler is the guy that said that, I went to war for, American steel, and I went for the oil companies, and I went for the United Fruit Company, and he was basically just disparaging all of the foreign adventures he had been sent on as being tools for profit.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy. I mean, but less said about that right now, the better. My point being that the old right, the reactionary right, the right wing that my grandfather was a part of, was really insular, was deeply property oriented, because of natural law, and interestingly enough, anti-interventionist. They see the modern state as a Leviathan state, and they refer to it as the welfare warfare state. So government monies go to two places. They go to placate the proletariat, and they go to defend American property rights. So, Smedley Butler called them out on that. Justin Raimundo is calling them out on that. So Vietnam, the Iraq wars, there was, in fact, a strong reactionary opposition to that, including, interestingly enough, the John Birch Society opposed the Vietnam War. It's just that they opposed the demonstrators even more. They are all about, police thumping demonstrators while supporting their cause. But a very interesting kind of mentality. So Justin Raimundo was the founder of a website called antiwar.com. No spark of recognition. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Ronald Radosh is liberal in a more or less modern sense, probably an Adlai Stevenson Democrat, that kind of liberal. And I believe he wrote for the New Republic, but he did a book on what he's calling the prophets of the right, people who are on the right wing that fall into the categories that I've just kind of mentioned, who work, talk, and act against American interventionism. And again, this is in the context of Vietnam. Murray Rothbard wrote a book, I haven't read it, called The Betrayal of the American Right. I didn't read it because I think I probably already know what he's going to say, having read the other two books. And while Rothbard is fun to read, he's not an apologist. He doesn't always lay out the most reasoned defense of his position. Yeah, but he is fun to read. He's kind of like Mencken in that regard. So I actually recommend reading all of these books. With the caveat that one of them I have not read. So antiwar.com, you guys, are you aware of this?
No.
It was founded by Justin Raimundo. It was founded in opposition to the U.S. and NATO going into Bosnia, which is interesting because I actually supported our going into Bosnia. I thought it was a damn good idea. It's like the one war where I felt we could actually make a difference for the good. None of you have a Serbian background, do you?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. I mean, that's great if you do, but, possibly better if you don't. I was working with refugees from Bosnia for a little while. Family with two kids. The little girl was 5 years old, was carrying around a piece of shrapnel on her back. It had been in the siege of Sarajevo. It was bad. God, you could eat the PTSD with a spoon. But anyway, so this guy came out kind of against the one war in my life where I was actually thinking I'm kind of in favor of. But I kind of got hooked on this. It's a good resource. But it is run by anarcho-capitalists.
Wow.
To the point, my point about the anti-interventionist, anti-militarist component that exists with libertarianism and what I'm going to call paleoconservatism. So this is a fairly recent screenshot of antiwar.com. Yeah, there's nothing I can say against this, really. I think for the most part they're spot on about international politics and international, I don't know what to call it, sort of genocidal state that we're plunging the world into. Well,
So I will check that out. Thank you for that.
yeah, please do. I think if you get nothing else from this, just that one, antiwar.com. Take a look at it. It's got some interesting information from a libertarian perspective, which makes it even more interesting. All right, so what happened to Rothbard? Rothbard was part of the New Left, and then this happened. There was this turn to the right wing, specifically happening with Pat Buchanan. So what do I want to say about Pat Buchanan? He's talking about Ron Paul here. He says, Ron, welcome Pat's entry into the race. I love this first name, you know. Good old Pat. Yeah. And pledged his support to the Buchanan effort. Unlike most libertarians, Ron Paul understands the real world of politics, and he realizes that in Pat Buchanan, we have an unprecedented opportunity to bring forge a powerful paleo coalition to create a new libertarian, conservative, old right movement that can grow. So right here, he's bringing the libertarians back into the old right. He's basically saying that they're the missing component that the right wing needs in order to rebuild and achieve success, electoral success. For an anarchist of any stripe looking for electoral success is kind of an oxymoron. Libertarians for better government doesn't really ring. But okay, so the old right movement that can grow can become extraordinarily influential, and that can even take over the presidency. And he was betting on Pat Buchanan. Rothbard passed away before Trump showed up, but you can kind of imagine. So here's a couple of people that are associated with the paleo conservative movement. One thing I learned back in the day when I was an evangelical Christian, I came across a guy named Francis Schaeffer. Does that ring any bells?
No, I don't know him.
Okay.
I don't know him either.
Yet another rabbit hole I'm not going to go down. And I'm going to stop asking if you know who these guys are. If they ring a bell,
okay.
Just go ding.
Deal.
Yeah. Francis Schaeffer briefly was an apologist, and he worked a particular strain of Christian apologetics, which is sort of presuppositional apologetics, where you don't attack the person's beliefs per se, you attack their presumptions that underlie their beliefs, which we've done just now with natural law. That's actually
Right.
what we did. We examined the presuppositions. But beyond that, you have to understand their profits. So you're not off the hook. If you're going to go after any other heretical belief, in Francis Schaeffer's case, it was something called secular humanism. He went after that like, a pit bull. He just wanted to tear it to pieces. But in order to do so, you got to read these guys. And that's why we have Google. God gave us Google so we can read enough of these guys to be able to present a slideshow on a podcast. So Chodorov is one of these guys. I don't know too much about him. I could do a deeper dive into him, but he makes some statements that weld very, very well with Murray Rothbard's brand of libertarianism. The presumably rational human animal, has become so inured to political interventions that he cannot think of the making of a living without them. It hardly occurs to us that we might do better operating under our own steam, within the limits put on us by nature, and without political restraints, controls, or subventions. That these interventionary measures are placed in our path for purposes diametrically opposed to our search for a better living. And you can see how this flows nicely into anarcho-capitalism. Basically saying the same thing. Saying the same thing as the objectivists as well, particularly that last line. Purposes diametrically opposed to our search for a better living, because you got to remember the whole point of objectivism was to live a happy life. And arguably, same with anarcho-capitalism. So, that's Chodorov. This guy is really interesting and really scary. This is, guys, John Derbyshire, an American journalist and political commentary. He was one of the last paleo-conservatives at the National Review until he was fired for writing an article in Talkies magazine that was widely described as racist. I went to Talkies magazine, I read the article, and it is racist. He also has worked with and written for a white nationalist website called VDARE. VDARE is explicitly white supremacist, not white nationalist. It was set up primarily to defend the United States from the hordes of unwashed masses, the people we built the Statue of Liberty for, and is profoundly, deeply anti-immigrant.
Besides his facial expression, did Stephen Miller pick up any of his learning from this guy?
I would imagine so. I mean, these are not unknown people. These I picked these guys precisely because of their popularity. They get quoted a lot. They show up a lot. It doesn't say so here, but John Derbyshire also has written for the Lou Rockwell Report. The Lou Rockwell Report is the standard bearer of anarcho-capitalism. Lou Rockwell and Rothbard were basically joined like Siamese twins. I mean, one talks and the other moves their mouth. So what does he say? Universal suffrage democracy may have been a good idea 120 years ago, when most adults did productive work into their 60s and then, fucking died. So, that's an ideal. We can all try to achieve that. In today's top-heavy welfare states, it just empowers tax eaters to loot the national wealth. And here's where it gets interesting. The real menace, the disease eating away at the heart of Western society, is white ethno-masochism, hatred of one's own type, one's own race, one's own ancestors, one's own parents, one's own fellow citizens who do not share a bizarrely unreal and idealistic view of human nature. I don't have to translate this for you.
No,
you know what he's saying.
That's kind of what we're hearing from MAGA, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, a particular section of MAGA, Nick Fuentes.
Right.
This is Samuel T. Francis. American writer and political theorist. He was columnist and editor for the Washington Times. You guys know the Washington Times. It was founded by, the Unification Church, a.k.a. the Moonies. Would later become a dominant force in the Council of Conservative Citizens. The Council of Conservative Citizens is the renamed Council of White Citizens, or whatever it was. It was a southern group of, businessmen and other people of renown that formed together to fight integration and uphold the Jim Crow regime. So all around nice guy. And he says, Martin Luther King's legacy, as its keepers know, is profoundly at odds with the historic American order. Can you kind of see the natural law thing popping up here?
Yeah.
And that is why they can have no rest until the symbols of that order are pulled up root and branch.
Wow.
Okay. Samuel T. Francis also has written for Lou Rockwell. He was dead now, but he used to write for Lou Rockwell on occasion, or at least they'd reprint his columns. So you're seeing this interesting... There's already the convergence between paleo-conservative and what is now becoming known as paleo-libertarianism, and drifting into neo-Confederate.
Mm-hmm. I find it interesting, all these splinter groups within the libertarian movement. Do they all vote for Trump?
No.
No.
I mean, if you're a real libertarian, you don't vote.
Wow.
Right there, that's probably a good 3/4 of them. But there are other strands of libertarianism, which if we had time, I'd love to go into, but that don't really fit with the theme of what I'm doing. One I'll just mention is a guy named Murray Bookchin, who developed a theory called agorism, where the entire economy is based on barter. And
that's like Charles Eisenstein.
in the absence of barter, he would support the black market. This would be like your Silk Road libertarian.
The Burning Man philosophy, everything, there was no money to be spent up in there.
Oh, Burning Man libertarianism joined up nicely, as I think I demonstrated last time.
Yeah.
That's not a knock on Burning Man, but...
do you guys know Charles Eisenstein?
No.
He's got a lot of YouTubes, but he talks about what happens as systems collapse, and that type of trade becomes one of the primary means of gathering things you might need that you can't take care of.
Yeah. I mean, at its base, it's kind of dystopian.
It could be. Or it could go the other way, depending on people's attitude.
Yeah. Depends on what you have available to barter, though.
That's true.
I mean, am I going to, trade 5 chickens for a vial of insulin?
Maybe.
So, anyway, carrying on.
Yep.
So, Murray Rothbard wrote an essay, which I've read, and I almost immediately forgot, called Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature. It's all kind of flowing together here. So, egalitarianism, the idea that all humans are basically of equal worth, is anti-nature. And here's his voting record, Murray Rothbard's.
Oh, gosh.
So he's back in the day, probably 60, 64. When did the Dixiecrats split away from the Democrats? It wasn't 64, so it'd have to be earlier than that. So that would be 1960, I guess. So there was this push to start integrating schools, things like that. There was this push back by, the Council of White Citizens, aka the Council of Conservative Citizens, and part of the southern apparatus of the Democratic Party split away, and they formed something that was known as the Dixiecrats, and they promoted their own presidential candidate. That presidential candidate is pictured on the left, or that beaming smile of Barry Goldwater, and that's Strom Thurmond. So Murray Rothbard, a Jewish kid from Manhattan, supported Strom Thurmond. Just kind of let that wiggle around in the brain as a brainworm for a while. Murray Rothbard has a very interesting past. I may have mentioned he was born in a socialist household where, the political arguments were, who's right, Stalin or Trotsky, and rebelled, rather obviously. He became a fully functioning advocate of the free market at first, and then kind of developed his own way afterwards. So he voted for Strom Thurmond. He voted for Ross Perot. You guys remember Ross Perot, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the guy who's all ears. There we go. Thank you. And then he supported and voted for Pat Buchanan. He was unalive when Ron Paul made his first run for presidency, but Ron Paul considers himself a devotee of Murray Rothbard. So I just included that for sundry reasons. And sort of this. He also supported this guy.
Wow. Murray did?
I'm waiting for the dings.
Wait a minute, is that a typo or?
It's David Duke or David Duck.
I knew that, but
Ding, 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 ding.
There we go. Yeah, I was kind of inspired by Unforgiven. Which, Gene Hackman and the Duck of Death.
Oh. Ding.
So he says, Murray Rothbard does, it is fascinating that there is nothing in Duke's current program or campaign that could not also be embraced by paleoconservatives or paleo-libertarians. Lower taxes, dismantling the bureaucracy, slashing the welfare system, attacking affirmative action and racial set-asides, calling for equal rights of all Americans, including whites. What's wrong with any of that? And of course, the mighty anti-Duke coalition did not choose to oppose Duke on any of these issues. Indeed, even the most leftist of his opponents grudgingly admitted he had a point. Instead, the establishment concentrated on the very negative campaigning that they professed to abhor. So, yeah, Rothbard came out in defense. This Jewish kid from Manhattan came out in defense of a Klansman.
Wow. That is mind-bending, isn't it?
Indeed.
All right, so that's Ron Paul. During the campaign, the New Republic went back through a bunch of back issues of the Rothbard Rockwell Report, and I think it eventually became the Ron Paul Lou Rockwell Report. And they discovered some pretty nasty stuff having to do specifically with black people. Really insidious language, referring to them as the mob, talking in terms of violence against white people, lower intelligence, all of the usual suspect attributes that the white right, I'm going to call them that now, it makes more sense, refers to. And that showed up, and Ron Paul immediately disavowed it, said it was Lou Rockwell's writing. Lou Rockwell immediately disavowed it, said it was some intern, and nobody knows, but it was actually published under Ron Paul's byline. So, this New Republic article about angry white men says, as one prominent Washington libertarian told me, there are too many libertarians in this country who, because they are attracted to Mises, are then told that a defense of the Confederacy is a part of libertarian thought. And I'll leave it up for a second just so you can read the rest of it. It's pretty damning. So, Mr. Libertarian, the guy that represented libertarian ideals, who ran for president, and considering the fact that he first ran as an independent, then as a Republican, still managed to gather enough votes to make a difference, and arguably his constituency went on to vote for Trump. I think that's fair to say. The point of this is to make the argument that they form a basis for what we're calling, the bright endarkenment. And this is definitely a stream. Okay, enough about Ron Paul. I forgot where I got this, but somebody listed... Oh, I do remember where I got this. I just mixed up the slides a bit. But briefly, paleo-libertarianism, with its root deep in the old right, sees the Leviathan state as an institutional source of evil throughout history. The unhampered free market as a moral and practical imperative. Private property as an economic and moral necessity for a free society. The garrison state as a preeminent threat to liberty and social well-being. The welfare state as organized theft that victimizes producers and eventually even its clients. Civil liberties based on property rights as essential to a just society. The egalitarian ethic is morally reprehensible and destructive of private property and social authority. Social authority as embedded in the family, church, community, and other intermediating institutions as helping protect the individual from the state and as necessary for a free and virtuous society. Western culture as eminently worthy of preservation and defense. Objective standards of morality, especially as found in the Judeo-Christian tradition, which doesn't exist, as essential to free and civilized social order. So, a couple of things to just pick out here, but the one I'm going to focus on immediately, because the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory, is the second to last. Western culture is eminently worthy of preservation and defense. That's a dog whistle.
Right. It's a white supremacist sort of thinking, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. And I got that from this particular source, where he's discussing what is paleo-libertarianism, and he literally uses this picture as kind of context.
Is that Pinochet? Who is that?
Ding.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's Augusto Pinochet. It's not the first time I've come across like a right-wing defense. I was at this traditionalist Catholic party, which sounds like a contradiction in terms. It was actually a really good party. This guy, I don't know where he came from, possibly Cuba, I don't know, came in bearing this wonderful tequila. I don't know if you guys know, but tequila is a lot like scotch. You can get bad tequila, and you can get like aged, beautiful, just incredibly smooth tequila. And that's what this guy had. And he and I got into an argument about Catholicism and politics. And he ended up yelling at me that we have to support Pinochet because he is a Christian dictator.
Wow.
The connection between the right wing and Pinochet extends to, Friedman. Milton Friedman, that's what it is. Who helped set up, along with his comrades at the University of Chicago, a monetarist economic system for Chile after they got rid of Allende. And we're essentially deconstructing all of the social democratic reforms that Allende had put into place. And, of course, this is the same regime that's dropping dissidents into the ocean, via helicopters. If you ever see a right-winger wearing helicopter ride T-shirt, that's what he's referring to.
And this is like the puppet leader in Chile, supported by the U.S. government, right?
Oh, well, hell, we installed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, add that to the list.
Yeah.
Masade, Arbenz, Lumumba, Allende, yet another one. So Pinochet, Christian dictator, and apparently is something of a inspiration for paleo-libertarianism. So, just to track where we are, we started with Murray Rothbard and the Peace and Freedom Party. Now we're here.
It seems like this thread has traveled that far, Weird.
Well, yeah. Fascism is extremely seductive to these folks.
Yeah, it's on the rise. Is this a good place to stop for today, or do we want to continue going? How much more do we have?
We've got a bit more. I can try to push through those next few slides.
Okay, cool.
Fairly quickly, unless you guys want to put this off.
I feel like it's a good place to stop and maybe pick up again here at paleo-libertarianism.
We did lose...
yeah, Craig jumped off.
Craig, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's stop here.
Yeah.
And we'll pick up next week.
Yeah, this is great on this discussion. I really appreciate it. I want to thank you, Scooter, again for putting this together and bringing this to us and, building this common understanding.
Yeah. It can be a little terrifying. There are a lot of people who buy into this, and a lot of people in power who buy into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the frightening part.
Yeah.
One, and I hope to do this next, is tech bros.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And how that whole, I don't know what to call it, milieu lends itself very well to
you can already see the tie-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very evident.
I mean, you can see it if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And thank you for anyone listening to A Bold and Distant Future, and we'll hope to see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
All right,
Adios.
Cheers.